Always trust a mother's intuition. I'll start by saying that nothing could have prepared me for what I was going to discover the morning after a night out. It started as every other night would. Me and my family got ready to head to our local bar for a fundraising event. I had just turned 18 and was looking to having a chill night with friends and family. I knew most of the people there, so I was feeling really relaxed. While at the bar, I went to pay for my drink when the bartender told me it had already been paid for. When I went to see who had paid for it, I saw my cousin's partner. He is around 12 years older than me, give or take. I gave him a quick wave and we did the normal niceties like, "Hi, how are you doing?" It's important to note that I had barely spoken more than 2 words to him before, as he was usually quiet, or retreated to his room when we would go and visit my cousin. After saying thank you, I thought nothing of it. Nothing seemed off with our little interaction. By the end of the night, I'd gathered my family together and told them I wanted to head home. At this point in time, I was still living at home with my mother. She had made plans to stay at my grandmother's that night, so I was going to go home and sleep. It was around 11:30 p.m, and I was outside having a smoke, about to head to my car. Just as I was about to head to my car, I heard someone call my name, so I turned to find my cousin's partner walking towards me. He asked if I was heading home for the night, which I thought was weird, so I said it's late, so I was calling it a night. Without skipping a beat, he mentioned the car that I drive, and said he would see me around sometime. At this point, I got a bit creeped out, so I said goodnight, and walked off to my car. There were plenty of people outside, so I wasn't concerned at all. Once I got in the car, my phone went off, and it was my mother. She was begging and pleading with me to go and stay at my grandmother's house for night, saying that she had a really bad feeling. Initially, I was really annoyed. I just wanted to go home and go to sleep in my own bed, but she insisted. I couldn't understand why. I was used to being alone at home at night, but she wouldn't let it go. I hung up and started driving home. I couldn't be bothered going to my grandma's when my house was just down the road. I was tired. I just wanted to go home. Not even halfway home, my phone went off, so I pulled over to check it. It was my sister asking me to please go stay at my grandma's house. I was pissed off at this point and decided it would be easier going to my grandma's house instead of arguing with my family. When I got to my grandma's house, everyone was asleep. Now I was really pissed off and went straight to sleep. The night was uneventful, but I woke in the morning to my family talking about how they all had a feeling of dread, which is why they didn't want me to go home alone that night. My mother and I left for home at lunch. I felt off as soon as we pulled into the driveway. Once I got to the door, I found a police card wedged into the door to call them ASAP. I went inside and found my mother's camera on the kitchen table. This was a huge red flag as it was in my bedroom before we left for the fundraiser. I went to my room to find my entire room had been ransacked. No other room in our house had been touched. My blankets had been pulled back, and it looked like someone had been in my bed. My knickers drawer was wide open, and some were also sprawled on the floor. Another camera of my mother's was also on the table where my TV was, which was directly opposite my bed. Clothes were everywhere. By this point, I was losing my shit. If I had gone home, like the plan all along, I would have made my way through the house and then crawled into bed without switching my lamp on. I had done this so many times previously, and I wouldn't have seen the state of my room at all. My mother gave them a call to find out what happened, and what she told me made the blood drain from my face. Police were alerted to a break-in at our next-door neighbour's house when our neighbours found a man wandering inside their house. The man claimed he was my friend and went into the wrong house, and they chased him out. Our house had a big 8 by 12 metre deck which looked over my neighbour's house. They called police again when they spotted the same man having a smoke on our deck. Police arrived at our house at 2 a.m, but since I wasn't home, no one answered the door. They noticed the lights on, so they went inside to investigate. They made their way through the house and found a man hiding in my bedroom in the dark. He couldn't give a reason why he was there, or why he was hiding in my room. They had arrested him and taken him to the station and wanted to know if we knew him. Turns out it was my cousin's partner, and he had been hiding in my bedroom for over an hour waiting for me to get home, because he knew I would be going home that night. My mother's gut feeling saved me from going home alone that night, and my neighbour's vigilance helped to catch a creep. I always listen now without question whenever she has a bad feeling. Who knows what would have happened? All I know is it wouldn't have been pretty. He was charged with breaking and entering and spent some time in jail before being released and moving country. Always trust your mother's gut feeling, people. It sure saved me from having to deal with that. In the early 1980s, well before I was born, my mother was teaching in Jackson, Mississippi. It was a very hectic job, and she was glad to get back home every day a little after 3. The first thing she would do would be to change into her running gear and go for a run. She was never a fast runner. Normally, she would do about a 10-minute mile, but she continued running because fitness is good. She started out on the run one day, but there was a problem with the door to the apartment she and my dad lived in. The apartment was on the 2nd story. As she closed the door, the lock to the apartment gave her trouble in closing and locking the door. Every time she would leave or come, it would usually take her 5 or 10 minutes to get the door locked. She and my dad often talked about getting the lock fixed on the door, but so far they had not done so. Finally, the apartment was locked, and off she went for her daily run. My mum was getting toward the middle of the run when suddenly a jogger came up beside her. He was tall and thin, had curly grey hair, and blue eyes. He started off talking, asking questions like, "Where do you live? Do you jog every day?" etc. After a few minutes, my mum began to get uncomfortable with the personal tone he was using while asking questions. She stopped answering them. Finally, she saw a street, and she knew that if she cut over on that street, she could run back home. She tried to tell the man, "I gotta go now. Bye." Then she turned down the street and started heading home. A few seconds later, she thought she heard footsteps behind her. Not wanting to turn around to see who it was, she continued as fast as she could, probably reaching a 9 or 8-minute mile as she flew past. Finally, she saw the door to their apartment building. She ran up the stairs, saying to herself, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus, help me." She got to the door, holding onto the keys. She slipped them into the lock as quickly as she could, and turned them. And the door opened right away. She ran inside, locking the door, and pressed herself against the far wall of the apartment, completely out of breath. Seconds later, she heard a stiff but friendly knock on the door. "Who is it?" my mum said, her voice cracking. The grey-haired man she met on the run said, "You know who I am, and you know what I want." Now she was completely and totally afraid, and she yelled back, "You had better get out of here, or I will call the police." She did not move. A minute or two later, she heard footsteps going down the stairs. No one else was in the apartment building. After waiting a few minutes, still not moving, she was pretty sure that the man was gone. Across the street was a prayer ministry called Bethel House of God. She called there and explained to them what happened and asked them if she could come over and if they would wait for her on the lawn. They said of course they would. She waited until they might be on the lawn. Then she rushed out of the apartment, ran down the stairs, then ran across the street. My dad didn't come home until maybe an hour or so later, but he soon got to hear about it. Sure enough, every other time, the lock would still stick and take 5 or 10 minutes to fix. My mum was thankful for how God got the lock to work immediately that one time. My mum's gut feeling saved her from a murderer. In summer of 2012, when my mum was 30, she had a habit of jogging late at night on the track in the forest. Our town is small, considered safe, and it's a big tourist destination. The track in the forest is illuminated by streetlight and it's visible in the front and back, but sides are full of trees and it's completely black when it's dark. She was jogging one night as usual but got scared without any reason and felt like she was being watched or followed. She continued jogging for a few more minutes but heard something behind her and turned around to see what it is. She saw a pair of jeans in the middle of the track. She immediately ran away, got in the car and got home. 2 days later, the body of a 31-year-old Mexican woman was found shallowly buried and covered with branches in that same forest. The murdered sliced her throat so bad he almost decapitated her. It was all over the news. He got caught, but he's out in 2027 because he pleaded not guilty. To this day, I believe my mum wasn't going to be the target, but the witness and collateral damage that night if she hadn't ran away. Back in the 80s, my Aunt Kay was in her early 20s. This was before she married my uncle, and when she would drive long distances back and forth between her parents and my uncle's to visit. It was a transitional period for them. He had just graduated, and she hadn't moved out yet to be with him. It was a long drive across several states through the desert, which took her hours. This desolate highway would have stretches of road that lasted hundreds of miles, where you quite often wouldn't see another driver, let alone a gas station. So Aunt Kay set out and began one of these journeys. A couple hours into the drive, Aunt Kay noticed a dark vehicle slowly catching up to her. She barely noticed as she continued to sing along to Les Miserables until the vehicle got aggressively close. She turned off the music and looked into her rearview mirror, seeing the vehicle flash its brights and a hand pointing at her car and motioning to pull over. Alarmed, she quickly slowed and began to look for a good place to pull off the road to see what must be wrong with her car. The second she began to pull off the road, she said she felt and heard as clear as day, "Don't pull over," then again, stronger, "Don't pull over." Call it God, intuition, or just a gut feeling, but a jolt of adrenaline and fear shot through Aunt Kay's body as she hit the gas and peeled back out onto the highway. Heart pumping, Aunt Kay silently asked herself what the hell was that, as she saw the vehicle peel out behind her. The dark vehicle continued to closely follow, flashed their brights and motioned to her to pull over. Fear and confusion set in as Aunt Kay began to question what was going on. Why was the driver motioning for her to pull over? Was there something wrong with her car? And what the hell was that warning she felt? It would have been a severe situation if her car broke down out there, especially before cell phones. But she pressed on. Just as her resolve wavered, she started questioning if she truly did feel what she felt. She started slowing back down when the dark vehicle picked up speed. It entered into the oncoming traffic lane and came level to my aunt's car. The driver smiled, pointed, motioned and mouthed the words, "Pull over," to my aunt. She said the second she looked into his eyes, she felt pure evil. She felt a horribly sick feeling in the pit of her stomach, and again heard the words in her head, "Don't pull over." She described him as looking scary, greasy, and noticed he was missing a couple of teeth in his smile that she'll never forget. That sent chills through her. This quickly dispelled any thoughts she had of pulling over, and she put the pedal to the metal to try to lose him. He chased after her. She slowed down. He slowed down. She sped up. He sped up. It got to the point that he began to try to push her car off the road. Aunt Kay was to the point of tears as this creep continued to terrorize her alone, out in the middle of nowhere. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Aunt Kay sees a couple of semis off in the distance. She felt if only she could get close or even get in between those trucks she would be safe, so she took off. He continued to flash his lights, honk his horn, and try to hit her car until she got close enough to the trucks. As she got in between them, she saw the dark vehicle slow way down and eventually disappear from view. She stayed with the trucks for a couple hours until she felt safe enough to pull over at a gas station and cry. Fast forward several years. My aunt and uncle are married. He's working at a law firm as a high-profile criminal prosecutor in Las Vegas. She's now a full-time mom of several young children. Since I've known my aunt, she's been obsessed with true crime. Dateline, 2020, and Unsolved Mysteries were always playing at their house. This day was no different. She was folding laundry in the kitchen while listening to the TV in the other room. The interviewer was talking about a man who was being interviewed on death row. As she paired another match of socks, she heard the man describe one of his tactics for procuring victims. According to him, he would wait along the side of the highway. A car would go by with a family, and he'd wait. Another car with a male driver would go by, and he'd wait, but every so often a car would go by with a pretty woman driving alone. So I'd pull out behind and follow him. I'd flash my brights, honk and motion for him to pull over. Aunt Kay, paralyzed, continued to listen. When they would eventually pull over, I'd tell him to pop the hood, and I'd be able to tell him what was wrong with their car. They would, and I'd yank a couple wires. When the car wouldn't start, I'd tell him no problems. My buddy has a shop in the next town. I can give you a ride and he'll give you a fair deal. My aunt slowly moved to the living room. They'd get in, and I'd SA and kill them. Bury 'em anywhere in the desert. When asked how many times he did this, he responded, "They'll never find all the bodies. I can't even count." And how many got away? 2 or 3. My aunt stood alone staring into the same toothless grin she saw on that highway that day. It was Henry Lee Lucas. Whatever it was, it sounded like our mums. But it wasn't. When I was 9, we lived in a remote forested military area. Can't disclose too much for privacy, but yeah. Let's just say spotting elephants, deer, and the occasional predator was a normal part of life there. One night, there was a formal event that our parents had to attend, and kids weren't allowed, so it was just me and my friend, let's call him Carl, both 9 years old, and our younger brothers Sam and Duke around 5, all made-up names. We stayed at my place and decided to watch Shrek. It was late at night, pitch dark outside because of the forest, and eerily quiet. Suddenly the lights went out for a few minutes, then came back on. We were standing near the window when I heard Carl's mum calling out my nickname from outside. We lived on the 2nd floor. It was a strange, raspy voice, not normal, and what made it creepier was that barely anyone knew that nickname. It wasn't something the neighbours would know. Cindy? Cindy? I asked Carl if he heard it too. He looked freaked out and said, "No, but I heard your mum calling my name." "Carl? Carl!" We both froze. There was no way our mums were anywhere nearby. They were at the party, miles away, and we were alone in the house. The younger kids, Sam and Duke, said they heard the voices too, but us being 9 years old, we assumed they were just copying us or mishearing things as they were just around 5 years old. Still, we were all terrified. We tried to distract ourselves with the movie and waited for our parents to come home. When they finally did, we told them, but of course, they didn't believe us. They brushed it off as imagination or a dream. We all eventually moved on. Fast forward almost 9 years later, Carl and I met again and were reminiscing. I brought up that night, and to my shock, he remembered everything clearly. His brother Duke did too. My brother Sam only remembered bits and pieces, but it was enough to confirm we hadn't imagined it. I still don't know what we heard or why, but it wasn't normal. It wasn't just a prank or a dream. We heard each other's mums calling us in eerie voices when they were nowhere near us. To this day, I can't explain it. Thank you for spending time with me. If you have a true story you'd like to share, something eerie, strange, or unforgettable, send them to my email in the description below. clairetruestory@gmail.com. I'd love to feature your story in an upcoming video. Until next time, stay safe, stay warm, and stay cozy.